Okay, we're going to be talking about trim sheets, how to make them and how to use them and why. This is a trim sheet. It's a tileable texture that can be used to add details to assets so that they all feel the same, so we can do the least amount of work and get the most amount of gain from it. If you see, I've taken this asset, and if done properly, I should be able to move this single plane, and it will tile forever. To make this happen, I can just take any plane, convert to editable poly. I'm going to click Edges, and I'm going to make sure I say Preserve UVs. This only works with tileable textures, but it just allows me to move things around like this. The trim sheet gives me the ability to make this one texture and add this to a dozen objects. I can change proportions, size, and make sure everything works perfectly. And it has a lot of robustness. Now I'm going to show you how we build these. First, I'm going to start with a plane, because I know whenever I unwrap a plane that it's automatically in the one UV space. That's this square. There's more UV squares. If I move this plane, you can see them here. Anything that's outside of that one UV plane will tile infinitely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a plane, and inside Photoshop I can create a texture like this. This I know tiles because it goes to the edges, and I've tested it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this out. So I'm just going to convert to editable poly. I'm going to press 1 and Alt-C for cut or Alt-1 for edge. I'm just putting edges in like this. I hit F4 to see the lines. I can Alt-C and cut these. And if I want them to be perfectly planed, like say I did something like this, I can just select both of them and do a one-dimensional scale. Now that's warping the texture, but I can always undo this, preserve UVs. I should put it on earlier, but this will make sense for what we're doing next. Once I'm here, I'm going to press 4. I'm going to select Imagine That Brick Wasn't Wonky. I'm going to detach it by clicking here. Now it's its own piece. Once I've done this to every single brick, like this, or every set, so if you see this one, it's 2, and if I cut it, I just need to break every single brick apart. Once they're all separate, and I'm going to do it to all of these here, then I'm going to add some height. So this is them separate. I need to make sure that I delete any edges. So if I cut this edge here, it'll have a vert here. I need to delete that. I want it to be very clean. If I press 1, I only have the ones on the edges. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one brick, and I'm going to add a shell modifier. I can go to the modifier stack, and I can search for shell. And it adds thickness. Just scroll up like that. And I'm going to do this to all of these bricks. Once I've done that, I've got the thickness that I want. Then I'm going to chamfer. That's just another modifier. You can just press X for certs, CH chamfer. That's this one. It's a modifier, so it's here. And in here, I can change the amount of sides, and I can change how they round out. And I'm just trying to smooth them out. Now this is going to keep them from getting collapsed and destroyed. So if I add a turbo smooth to this, I hit F4, you can see that the edges, it's still fine, but if I add a turbo smooth to just this box, it gets eaten. And these edges keep that from happening. Now what I want to do is I want to add edges this way, horizontally, and I want to add edges vertically. And the reason I want this is because whenever I go into ZBrush, because I'm going to be sculpting on each one of these bricks, I want it to have even squares in all the major pieces that I can get it in. It's hard to get it near these edges, but if I turn this up, you'll see that I've got plenty of resolution everywhere, and that's what we're going for. You just test it with TurboSmooth to see if it gets devoured. Once I'm here, this is what you'll have, and this is called a medium poly. Assets that are divided like this, it just means that they're not a high poly and they're not a low poly. They're indicated with an _MP instead of an LP or an HP for high poly. These assets, I don't need to have the TurboSmooth here. I'm just going to say, okay, just so I know what it would do, I've got them there. I'm just going to convert these to editable poly. I can select all of them at once, and I've done that to every piece of this. All right, I'm going to grab all of this, convert it to an editable poly. And I'm going to press G to bring up my grid, and I need to export this so I can sculpt on it in ZBrush. Just going to move it to the center. I'm just going to group it really quick so I can make sure I've got it exactly in the center. I can scoot it out like this, and I can just right-click these spinners, group, ungroup. Oh, and if you ever grouping something, like I say group, and I want to change something inside, I don't have to ungroup it. I can just go open, make a change, group, close, and it's back to being that group. There's only one change, is this brick. I don't want to have these little bricks. What I want to do is I'm just going to grab both of these, delete them. I'm just going to duplicate this brick. And in ZBrush, once I come back to Max, I can just duplicate it and I'll know that they exactly meet any details. All right. Once I've got this selected, I'm just going to go to File, Export, Export Selected, and let's just call this Inside My Assets, High Poly, and High Poly Trim Sheet, Trim Sheet, ZBrush, Export. All right, FBX, that'll be fine. OBG will work as well. Just going to hit Export. Smoothing groups, ZBrush can't take smoothing groups anyways, it'll just eat them, but I can leave that on. I just don't want triangulate on, and I don't want media. This exports the materials and other things that we don't care about, and I'm just going to hit OK. And then we're going to go into ZBrush and start sculpting on this mesh.